The Office of the Prime Minister Press Office is the primary liaison between the Fourth Estate and the Office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet.
Every day, we are working to build a more inclusive economy and a stronger, safer country.
Hear all of the latest developments as the Davis administration carries out the broad mandate of progress and change. Our live weekly press briefings provide full access to current newsmakers on the most topical issues of the day. We facilitate prompt responses from cabinet ministers on the latest reports and get answers on the issues that matter to you.
Will any penalties be levied against the...
OPM Press Now, keeping you in the know.
The synergy between our nations was evident during the Congress Heads of Government meeting in Kigali, where President Masisi and I discussed the path forward for both nations. When we look at the Vision 2036 for Botswana and the Vision 2040 for the Bahamas, the parallels are to miss. Both nations are driven by a commitment to environmental stewardship, good governance, effective social policy, and building resilient economies.
We need to redefine our alliances. We in Africa, your homeland, have signed a compact.
It's already indicated that they'll offer scholarships to our students here to study in Botswana, particularly in the areas of research, because they have done a wonderful job in identifying and responding to the issue of HIV/AIDS and the recent pandemic, and have been able to identify products that could help, new products that helps the whole world.
We saw pigs swimming, and they're a massive tourist attraction. To turn something that we take for granted into a unique, marketable product is just amazing. You are good. If you didn't know that, you are really good.
The Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press conference keeps Bahamians in the know. Each week, we also feature a new Bahamian food business.
Many of these businesses were started during the pandemic, and they really highlight Bahamian resilience and ingenuity. Today, we have
Kathy's Bakery,
Nutty Bavarian Bahamas,
proud owner of Sensational Goodies Pastries.
Get your small business featured in the weekly OPM press conference and share your dream with the country.
Good afternoon to our invited guests, the press, and those who have joined us via the live stream. My name is Natalia Clark, and I would like to thank you for joining us here at the Office of the Prime Minister for our weekly press briefing. Now, we have a very exciting and engaging agenda for you today, so I'm now going to turn it over to our acting press secretary, who will share with you our guests for today. Keisha Latterly.
Thank you, Natalia. Good afternoon, everyone, members of the media and those watching via online and on television. Well, our focus today is twofold. We'll be focusing on a major initiative of the Ministry of Education in its continued push to provide the most ideal and comfortable environment for student learning. This afternoon, the Minister of Education, the Honorable Glenys Hanna Martin, will provide details of the National School Breakfast Pilot Program, which is soon to be launched. We will also hear from the Honorable Pia Glover Roll, who has recently had labor added to her portfolio, as you will know, as Minister of Labor and the Public Service, and she will give us some details of the priorities of her new portfolio. We will start with Minister Hanna Martin on the new initiative in the Ministry of Education.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a special welcome to the media here present and to Bahamians throughout the country who are joining us for this press briefing. We're very pleased today to announce finally, after much groundwork and collaboration between the Ministry of Education, the Office of the Prime Minister, the first ever rollout of the National Breakfast Program in pilot form. We are confident that this program, as it rolls out in its pilot form, will cater to approximately 2,500 children in primary schools throughout the nation. In New Providence, those schools are Columbus Primary, Ridgeland Primary, Sandilands Primary, and Albury Sales Primary. And in the islands, the schools that are going to be testing this program are Rollville Primary in Exuma, Holmes Rock Primary in Grand Bahama, Cherokee Sound Primary in Abaco, and Old Bight Primary in Cat Island. Now, the selection process of schools was carefully designed because the whole purpose is to test the outcomes and the efficacy of this program. And the schools were chosen based on data as to potential student challenges. And they targeted schools that had populations below 600 and where attendance rates were below 89.2% in the primary schools. Now, research has shown globally that breakfast programs provide support for struggling families, fuel student health and learning, provide nutritional support for children, lead to better attendance rates and fewer missed days, and higher student performance. So this pilot program will allow us in those select schools to be able to monitor and collect data and to test the outcomes, because these are the outcomes that we would anticipate and expect. The purpose will be to provide free breakfast to all students, not a select few. Currently, the lunch program is for targeted students, but the breakfast program in these schools will cater to all students attending those schools 3 days a week. Those days will be Monday, Thursdays, and Fridays. And we will be providing hot, nutritious meals on those days. And those meals have been designed in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and the caterers to ensure that what we are delivering is not just food, but nutritious meals, first thing for these students 3 days a week. And the reason why those days were chosen, and of course we're testing it, it's a pilot, which is Monday, Thursday, and Friday, is because it's anticipated or it's projected that in many families there may be deficits to access to food on a weekend. And so the Monday when they return and the Friday before the weekend begins. And so the pilot phase of the National Breakfast Program, will launch in the month of October. And the government is doing this because there is a commitment to doing whatever is necessary to ensuring, first of all, that children are in school. That's the priority, get children in school. Secondly, to ensure that they receive quality instruction while they're in school for their human development and for securing the overall well-being and the future of our nation. And thirdly, and importantly, is to ensuring that children have access to food as they attend school. And so we are very excited by this program. And as I've indicated, it will be monitored because we want to be able to test and assess the effectiveness of this program as it meets a need, an anticipated need in our schools, particularly for those families where access to food may be a great challenge. Any questions? we're excited about it, and we think this is a fundamental paradigm shift, never before seen in the country, and we believe it will have long-standing fundamental impact on learning and student attendance and quality outcomes for our children and young people.
How much? Go ahead, President. What's the price tag for the pilot program, please?
Yeah. There's we need for the pilot itself, which is targeted schools, we anticipate, or the budget is $1 million, and for as long as that will take us, it will be utilized for the monitoring of this program in anticipation of a universal rollout in schools nationwide, primary schools in the first instance.
So $1 million covers, do you have an idea of how much that covers?
Well, it will, it's the 8 schools, the time. It's one academic year, and it would be those 8 schools, 2,500 children, at least in the beginning. The numbers may increase. It's an investment, and it's a critical one for child well-being.
What will the children be eating? Do you have an idea of what those meals will look like?
Well, I know they will include fruit. They may include milk, whether it's dairy or almond or plant-based, and then any other advice on the food itself? Yeah.
The types of foods, well, basically the breakfast meals are a balanced meal. They're made up of carbs, proteins. Of course, students need vitamin D, calcium, so those are how the meals are made up. For instance, they have a croissant sandwich with turkey sausage and egg. That's one example. We also want to include fibrous foods, so there's oatmeal with dried fruit and nuts.
Expect the pilot portion of this program to be? So I mean, like, when can we expect it to be a more wide-ranging program that affects all students throughout the month? How long is the pilot?
Well, the pilot and the budget covers one school year, and based on what the outcomes are during that year, decisions will be made. But the initial rollout period for the pilot is one school year. Because it's not just free breakfast. It's tied to outcomes and to meeting certain need issues and tied to attendance and all of these issues. And so it will be monitored so that we have data to ensure that we are appropriately addressing these issues in the schools that are affected in particular.
You mentioned about, I guess, the reasoning behind why certain schools were chosen. And one kind of stuck out to me as it relates to Abaco. Would any of the criteria have to do with the, the demographic of people in the community in terms of areas that may need the assistance more? Like, I guess, lower income areas that the children in those areas may need breakfast more than children in other areas that may not be as less fortunate as others. Mm-hmm. Specifically, like you mentioned, Cherokee Primary School in Abaco.
Right. Yes.
Just being in Abaco, I feel like there are some areas that would need assistance greater than, not saying that they don't need it, but was that taken into account?
What was taken into account was the population size, the attendance rates, and issues of that nature. And so, because it's tied to school attendance, all of the research that is shown globally has shown that breakfast programs lead to higher school attendance. When children are in school, they're in safe environments, they're in developmental environments. And so the criteria was based not on demographics per se, even though where there are assessments that children are maybe peculiarly at risk or vulnerable to risk. That was part of the criteria. So these schools were chosen based on a bundle of criteria with a view to seeking certain outcomes, chief of which is meeting food needs and also securing student attendance. Because when children are in school, they are in managed environments that are safe and that allow for their human development. And it's a human right. So your question is whether, that's other populations. What I'm saying to you is that schools were chosen based on a combined criteria, and which includes population size of the school, and also the attendance rates at those schools, and also extrinsic matters such as any peculiar vulnerabilities in certain communities. So it's not one thing. It's a bundle of things, and was based on that these schools were selected.
There were some concerns expressed this week by the Teachers Managerial Union about students being, in some instances, being dropped off to schools like extra early, like around 5 a.m., which can be a concern. Is that something that you are aware of and that the ministry is trying to address? If so, how is it being addressed?
Well, this has been an issue that has been quite long-standing. But I think what the president of BEMU pointed out is that we're not in the same times as we might have been yesteryear, and where there may be deficits in oversight. For example, no principal, security officers, whatever it is, that, it can be a risky situation. This is an issue that we have been struggling with, and as a result of that, we have determined that how the ministry can help is during school hours or just before school opens, and just right after school closes when everyone wants to go home, that we can bring in support staff to help with the monitoring of children waiting for parents. But, while we understand that parents face challenges that are real, they have to get to work. They don't have resources that are, that can take them here, there, and everywhere. And so they have to manage situations in a very limited reality. The ministry can only do so much. And, this is where you have to really lean on family support and other support individuals in your circle as parents to assist in meeting these needs. Because, it's not likely that we will have people there in the school campus at 5 a.m. The security officers are there, but their view is that they are not there to monitor that specific issue. While they concern themselves with that, their view is, and we've heard this from their union, is that is not what their primary role is, and frankly, they would not wish to have that assignment if it can be avoided, and so it's a difficult situation, and so parents, will have to join in with the rest of us in trying to create a manageable situation.
Also, there were some concerns expressed in the community about foreign teachers not being able to speak English, specifically Cuban teachers. Has the ministry gotten a resolution to that as well? I think an investigation was launched into the matter, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. I think the director has spoken to this already, but I'll speak to it again. This relationship with Cuba goes back 2 decades. It's not new. And what I've been advised is that in each new school year, there is an adjustment period on both sides that allows for an accommodation in terms of communications. The Cuban teachers, from what I've been advised, have provided an invaluable input to education. And in fact, in this year, they've allowed us to extend access to special education for children who have been falling between the cracks. And we are now being able to put them in islands that were never heretofore serviced with special ed teachers. The other area that they've brought to the table is technical and vocational. So, for example, we have a technical and vocational teacher in Acklands, and they have not seen that for a little while, and throughout the country. And so what we are doing is working with these teachers, because they're professionals, some of them have PhDs, and working with them to ensure that on both sides, with the way, our accents, and we speak quickly, I'm told. I didn't notice it, but that's what I'm told. and that the accents of the Cuban teachers and any nuances that they may be encountering in this early days, it's 3 weeks in school, that we are confident that there will not be continuing barriers. And if they are, then we will do what we have to do. We want to educate our children. But we are grateful to the Republic of Cuba, who has collaborated with us in ensuring that we can meet these deficits. Teacher shortages is a global crisis. And in fact, this year, World Teachers' Day is concentrating on that. It's not just the Bahamas. And we are grateful that our neighbors, our sister state, has seen it fit, and I'm sure they face their challenges too. But this has been consistent with their outreaches over the years in healthcare and education, that they have agreed to assist us. So I am inviting all Bahamians and families and parents, and parents. I think that parents understand the issue in these schools, that we work with these scenarios to ensure that our children are able to have access to education that would not otherwise be available because we don't have it available in the Bahamas. So special education and technical and vocational, these are the specialties that these teachers are bringing. The other thing I want to say is that the panel that selected these teachers did not have translators. The interviews were done in English. They also took written exams. And the panel included the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of the Public Service, the minister is here, the Public Service Commission, the Bahamas Educational Counselors Allied Workers Union, BECAWU, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They were all on this travel. And if, despite our best efforts, there are any issues, we'll work to iron them out. We want it to work. We want it to work. We don't want our efforts for our children not to work. And so all stakeholders I invite to come on board and cooperate in the interests of the children of this nation.
So you said we wanted to work. Can you give us details into what that could mean? Could we see maybe a program in place to assist these teachers that are already here? Or could we see maybe some of them being sent back if it is that they get here and it's a bit too much?
I just spoke to that, but I will repeat myself. Okay, I just answered that. I said that we have been told that in the early days, it's been 3 weeks, and we have, this is not the overwhelming majority of teachers that have come, that where there are any, that there are traditionally issues. The president of BECAWU spoke to this. She said that in her experience, and she's a veteran educator, that in the beginning it takes some adjustment between the student and the teacher. And over the 20 years, it has resolved itself. And I also indicated that where we see there are continuing issues, we will intervene. But I believe the parents understand what we are seeking to achieve, and that we're going to do that.
Last week, the education director said that the investigation would be completed by the end of last week. So are you able to say, I guess, from the investigation, are you able to confirm if there is a language barrier between teachers and students? Because you didn't necessarily say that specifically.
What do you ask me? What I said, or what the director's investigation?
Yes. Are you able to confirm?
Much of the investigation has been underway. Now, I've not gotten the details on by the end of it, but during the course of that, we were advised that there were these challenges that we have been advised in a very small amount of cases in certain schools, and that those issues are not unusual in the first few weeks of school, which I've said before. In the first few weeks of school, we have been advised over the 20 years, the 2 decades, that initially it acquired some acclimation between the teacher understanding the Bahamian child and the Bahamian child understanding fully the Cuban teacher in a minority of cases. Overwhelmingly, there are no issues. But where there are issues, we will seek to intervene and to ensure that there's a smooth rollout. And if there are issues that are unresolvable, we will step in. But I've been advised that this is not unusual. In some instances, that there is a sort of orientation between the new teacher and the student population.
Some of the Cuban teachers are expected to shadow some of the Bahamian teachers. Is that to be true?
Bahamian teachers? No, I'm not aware of that, of Cuban teachers shadowing Bahamian teachers. But what you may be referring to is that, and which is something that has happened over the years, is that you will have a Cuban teacher who's been here shadowing another Cuban teacher, and that, you know, just to assist in the acclimation of that teacher. If there's a problem, I want to assure you we will step in. But right now, we are not of the view that there is an issue that is interfering with the delivery of education for children in this country.
Just last question. Was there any update given to the BUT on this matter? I know the president expressed some concern.
I'm not sure. The president, I think she wrote to the prime minister, she wrote to the director, so I'm not sure. Perhaps your writer would be able to advise. But I'm not sure. The BUT president has, much of the dialogue has been in the media. I think she indicated she communicated with the director, and I believe they will have had dialogue. But I just wanted to say, just so we make it clear, we are committed to delivering education. We are very pleased that we are able to bring special ed teachers that are going into communities and schools that were never before serviced, that children with special needs who have been home, underserved, on a waiting list, that they are now being able to access education in a way in which we believe is equitable and is in accordance with their human rights. And the ministry's focus on technical and vocational education requires broad-based instruction. And so we are happy that we were able to get teachers in islands throughout the country. I'm told in Auckland they were very happy to have a technical and vocational teacher. Any more? No more? Thank you.
All right, we will move on now. The Honorable Minister Pia Glover-Roll has recently been given oversight for the Ministry of Labor. Today she will discuss some new initiatives, particularly in the labor sector, with the view to improving worker-employee relations in the country. Minister?
Thank you, Kishla. Good afternoon to the nation and to the media here present. So it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon, of course, to address the new portfolio that I've assumed over the past 8 days. My portfolio is still very new, and my team and I have jumped in head first, ready to take on the big challenges, to drive progress, and to improve the lives of Bahamians, which is always a priority. I previously worked with the Department of Labor, and I'm also an experienced certified labor advocate. So my labor portfolio doesn't represent altogether new experience for me. In fact, I'm happy to return to the Department of Labor. Every day since my appointment, I've met with labor leaders and stakeholders who have briefed me, identified areas of opportunity that we should target, and of course these areas are the ones that are creating the biggest impact on the lives of Bahamians. Over at the Public Service, labor relations has always been a priority for me and for our team, and of course our government has successfully negotiated 23 labor agreements in 23 months after years of no progress with our industrial agreements. So I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our labor relations unit at the Ministry of the Public Service, as well as the local union leaders for being partners in empowering Bahamian workers. Those who also know that everything for me, I always say it's always about the people. Every policy we implement, every program we launch, every action we take should have at its core a focus on people. And fortunately, thanks to the work of my predecessor and the leader of our party, the Prime Minister, we have a strong foundation to build on, and I'd like to thank Minister Bell for the work that he has started at the Department of Labor. So we speak to our national unemployment rate being at its lowest in 15 years. We haven't seen numbers this low since 2008, and we expect to see even more unemployed people take advantage of employment opportunities as the year progresses. In the past 2 years, the Department of Labor's Labor on the Blocks 2.0 job fairs have been filled with Bahamians seeking jobs and over 3,000 Bahamian job openings. And this has been a successful initiative that will continue. Just yesterday, I would have announced a partnership with the British Colonial Hotel to host a job fair that will fill over 300 positions from frontline to managerial levels. And that job fair will be held on the 28th, 26th, and 27th, of September from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Andre Rogers Baseball Stadium. Interested persons can find more information on the Department of Labor's social media pages. So far for the month of September, job fairs have been held to fill 136 positions at Sandals Resort in Emerald Bay, Exuma, and 25 openings at Sharkeys in Grand Bahama. Next month, our Labor on the Campus career fairs will roll out at 5 local high schools, and the following month, on the 18th of November, we'll have another job fair in the Pinewood community at Cleveland Eneas School. And as the economy continues to grow and unemployment shrinks, our objective is not just to get Bahamians back to work, but to provide access to opportunities for career growth, for training, skills development, and for existing and future opportunities. This week, representatives from the International Labour Organization are in country, and they are reviewing our designs and our plans for the implementation of the second generation Decent Work program. We're the first country, and I'm proud to say this, in the Caribbean to launch a second generation Decent Work country program. And we fully expect that this program will be a cornerstone for our approach to the labor market development. Decent Work is about empowering workers to be productive while ensuring that their rights are protected and they have fair opportunities for income, advancement, and inclusion. The program forms a part of our approach to working toward the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals to make progress towards Goal 8, which includes full and productive employment and decent work for all. So in fulfillment of Priority 1 of the Decent Work program, we're launching a national apprenticeship program that will be expedited and pushed to the forefront of our agenda, and I'm looking forward to that implementation. I don't want to preempt the introduction of the bill to Parliament, which will be high on our legislative agenda, but I will go on record to say that the program will be very comprehensive. Employers are going to be fully engaged to encourage their participation, and institutions like the National Training Agency and BTVI will be integrated to assist with soft skills, technical skills training, and workforce readiness. So you can expect to see training areas like health services, a priority item, construction, automotive and electrical, mechanical services, maritime, hospitality, and IT sectors. Of course, inclusivity is a major priority for our administration. And this does not only mean inclusion of people who are currently unemployed, but also people with criminal records, the many capable people living on our family islands, as well as a differently abled community. And when we talk about including Bahamians, we must also consider the many jobs that are currently filled by non-Bahamians that can be filled by Bahamians. If not now, then in the future. But we understand that while we understand that foreign labor is a vital part of our country and is needed in key areas, especially where there's a lack of local capacity. But there are sectors in our country where there are questions that have been asked by qualified Bahamians when they notice that certain roles, sometimes not high-skilled roles, are being filled by non-Bahamians without the existence of a clear plan to train a Bahamian for that role. And in our estimation, and in mine in particular, this has gone on for far too long. So while we may have laws and policies in place, oversight and enforcement has been lacking historically. The Prime Minister, in his most recent national address, spoke of efforts to engage with employers to ensure that Bahamians are given the opportunity to fill key roles in accordance with our laws. So this is a major priority of our Davis administration, and today I'm proud to announce that we are planning the formation of a new unit just a few days into my new portfolio that will enforce the law of the Bahamas as it relates to our notice of vacancy process and understudy policies. Employers are advised that all applications for labor certificates will be carefully reviewed to ensure that, where applicable, a Bahamian understudy must be identified before that application is processed. So this new task force will be following up to ensure that the identified Bahamian is receiving the training that they were promised so that they can eventually assimilate into the role. You can expect to see this unit fully come into force within the next 6 months or so. As we make progress on labor-related matters, I want public servants to know that they remain a priority. We'll continue working to decrease the decades-long backlog of promotions, regulations, reclassifications, and other long-standing matters that our public servants have waited for too long, and we're going to get those matters resolved. But the only way we can have a modern, productive, and efficient public service is if we're taking care of our people. So that is why we've raised the minimum wage. We've negotiated salary increases across the public service. Of course, that includes nurses, that includes teachers, that includes uniform branches. It's why we increase pensions. It's why we improve insurance benefits. And like we always say, the work continues. Our public service-wide promotion exercise began on the 1st of July, and we've already processed hundreds of promotions. And these promotions will begin to be rolled out at the beginning of October. The process will see hundreds of public servants promoted, many of which have already been doing the work without receiving the titles, without receiving the pay. People have waited for years for promotions that they've earned to be processed, and sadly, some people have been waiting for decades. But while we can't give them the years back that they've waited for, we can assure that the wait will be over in terms of them receiving what is due to them. For the people who have qualified for, earned more than one promotion during this time frame, they will receive double promotions, and that will get them where they're supposed to be in their careers. In total, this exercise represents over $6 million additional dollars in the pockets of public servants as we advance the first public service-wide promotional exercise in over 9 years. The last one would have been conducted under the Christie administration. Several weeks ago, we welcomed a new cohort into the Public Service Professional Engagement Program, also known as PSPEP, which is a rebranded 52-week program. After this opportunity, they would assimilate into gainful occupation or gainful employment. We're looking at all the synergies right now between labor and public service, and we're seeking to integrate where we can. So the PSPEP program will be a beneficiary, and among the programs that will benefit from the process of integration, we'll integrate our National Training Agency's Workforce Readiness Training Program into the PSPEP. So the current cohort will be the first to receive the NTA's comprehensive soft skills and employability training. And they will be receiving a stipend during this training to assist with associated costs and, of course, to incentivize participation. After receiving the training, the 300 trainees will then be onboarded into opportunities throughout the public service and the private sector. And on that note, I'd like to mention that this year's cohort, matched last year's cohort with a total of 30 differently abled participants enrolled in the PSPEP. 1 in 10 people enrolled in PSPEP are members of the differently abled community. And moving forward, we intend this to be the staple of this program. Last year's pilot was a great success. And in case you're wondering about the success of those differently able participants, we saw 100% assimilation or job placement rate at the end of the program. All 30 received jobs, not from government, but in the private sector, as a testament to the excellent work they did. So the PSPEP was a real life-changing experience for these differently abled community. And all of the participants who received the training and great on-the-job training and experience went on to be gainfully employed, and we're very proud of that. At Public Service, our digitalization process is ongoing. The full digitalization of the digital document management system should be done by next year, and we are now considering including other ministries in this process. We also have our special HR task force analyzing policies to make HR systems more efficient so that issues with backlogs will never happen again. We're now at a point where we're drafting amendments to existing legislation to ensure that the needed changes occur. Laws and regulations like the Public Service Act, the Employment Act, the Industrial Relations Act, and general orders are all a part of this process. Many of our policies have been entrenched for decades and will now be changed for the first time as we modernize the public service for efficiency and productivity. So there are antiquated policies like the course overload policy, where if you're a full-time employee, you must be a part-time student. And any courses you take outside of the definition of part-time will not count towards your qualification for a promotion. In 2023, in the era of online learning and flexible learning options, this policy clearly needs updating. There are many other examples like this, but we're doing the work now to ensure what is needed in the years to come by updating these antiquated policies and procedures. In our scope of work, it seems like very ambitious, a lot of the things that we're doing, but the things have to be done, as public servants would say. In terms of long-standing systemic issues that often fall by the wayside because of competing priorities or because they just seem too difficult to address. Well, everyone knows I'm not one to shy away from a challenge, and we can't have the status quo. We can't continue with the status quo, and we can't change the status quo by aiming low. So our administration is absolutely here to drive real, progressive, positive changes for the Bahamian people. And I continue to commit to do my part now through my work through the Ministry of Labor and the Public Service. I thank you. Any questions?
You would have mentioned that you wanted, I guess, to implement a notice of vacancy process and understudy policy, I guess, to allow qualified Bahamians to serve in positions that foreigners currently serve in. I guess, are you able to clarify how does that differ from what is currently in place now?
So it doesn't differ. What it is an enforcement policy unit. The current notice of vacancy process calls for you to, for an applicant who is a foreign applicant, to identify, or a company to identify an understudy. That is a component that is critical. But we have now put in place, we will now be putting in place an enforcement policy which speaks to ensuring that the understudy is identified, is an actual understudy, is able to engage in training in the period that is noted on the application, and that there is an actual course of action, so that at the end of the period where the foreign worker would have been allowed, that the Bahamian understudy is able to successfully assimilate into the role. There's not been an enforcement, there's not been accountability with that process, and it's left Bahamians who are capable and qualified for roles waiting in the balance because, you know, there's no process to determine, did they understudy? Are they now capable and able to fill those roles? That's a very important policy, enforcement policy that will be put in place to ensure that we're protecting the workforce for Bahamians. Not saying that foreign workers aren't necessary, but we have to ensure that the roles that foreign workers are filling are absolutely roles that there are no qualified and capable Bahamians available to fill.
So I assume this is assisting, like, I guess the government's crackdown on issuing or renewing work permits to foreigners?
This is a notice of vacancy policy enforcement from the Department of Labor standpoint. And of course, the Department of Labor has a seat at the table at the Immigration Board where there's cross-checking. But the first step in applying for a foreign applicant in an immigration process is ensuring that a labor certificate is accessed, and it's assessed through the Department of Labor. So we have to do, in the first instance, our diligence to ensure that in issuing the certificate, there are no Bahamians that are available. So it's a separate process than immigration. In fact, it's a preliminary process.
You mentioned the promotions rolling out in October. Are you able to say how many people will, I guess, be in this first tranche?
The service-wide promotion covers the entire country, every ministry, every department, every unit, and that, of course, equates to hundreds of public servants. We've been processing, the deadline for ministries to submit recommendations to the Ministry of Public Service was July 1st, and on July 1st, we started processing every day. The Ministry of Public Service and our Public Service Commission is processing those files. There are a few hundred, I don't have the exact number, it changes every day, but there's a good amount a few hundred that will be released starting in October, and we'll continue the process as as they come in through the approval process. And those hundreds equate to $6 million in terms of a budgetary perspective of promotions that will be assessed. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister Glover-Roll and Minister Hannah Martin in her absence. Are there any further questions that anyone would like to put forth?
Yeah, so I guess it was reported that the acting director at Immigration, Katura Ferguson, would be replaced by William Pratt. Are you able to confirm if that is true?
I am not able to confirm that. The relevant authorities will make an announcement on that at the appropriate time.
Are you at this time able to give the cost of how much was spent for the trip to the King's coronation as well as the recent independence celebrations?
At last report, no, that had not been tabulated and finalized, no.
Also, recently we heard that the cabinet briefings would be canceled for a more comprehensive briefing on Thursdays. Are you able to tell us the difference between, I guess, this briefing and what happened before, or is there something that is going to be different? Are you able to say, because we haven't had a press briefing since the announcement was made?
Well, that is a work in progress. I do want to make very clear, however, that the Davis administration remains committed to the media having full access. There may be some tweaks and changes along the way. And of course, the concerns of the press will be taken into account and considered. Again, changes will be made, alterations will be made, but the access to the media, of course, we have this press briefing, which is a weekly event, barring any unforeseen circumstances, and the press team is always available when there are queries or questions to be passed on to ministers or whoever the relevant authority is that you're trying to reach, and that has not changed.
Let me just ask though, because before this government came in, cabinet was something that reporters had a lot more control over in terms of getting their own story. Even when you worked in news, when we were out by the Churchill building, we took it upon ourselves. So when this government came in, the government took over the cabinet press briefing, put us in here, and we would sit in there and no one would come, or one person would come. Now it's canceled. I mean, are we supposed to believe as reporters that this government is, accessible, or being as transparent as it can be if it's reducing the amount of opportunities that we have to speak to members of the government?
Again, the concern was raised. I understand that. As you pointed out, being a reporter myself, I can tell you that as I've said, the administration has not changed its position on media access. I'm available. There are other members of the communications team who are available. We are responsive to questions from the media, and that has not changed. Even though some of the systems may have been altered, your questions or queries or concerns about the way things were altered will be taken into account, and I can assure you that the access remains.
Do you think that the way that the system is set up, do you think that it has the potential, as I think it does, to encourage some ministers to have a particular attitude towards reporters that, maybe they don't have to speak to us? Some ministers are very open to speaking, others not so much. Is this helping, I mean, like I say, is this making some ministers feel that they don't have to speak to reporters because there is this, bridge between us now?
I don't agree that there is a separation or barrier between members of the media and cabinet ministers. This forum is available. Again, you are able to reach out to this office at any time to get responses, as you have been, to queries that you have. Any further?
Critics would have said, I guess, that the Davis administration is said to be victimizing women public servants. Any response in regards to them?
No, I don't think that is the case, no. Any further questions? I think there was a question that was submitted about the status of things in Andros. There's some respiratory issues that some residents were experiencing there. So by way of update, I just want to say that the Ministry of Health has conducted an investigation. They have ruled out COVID or dengue as the cause of those respiratory issues. Samples were taken from patients who were complaining of those issues, and the ministry is currently investigating or awaiting the results of those samples to confirm what may have caused those issues. Well, I'm told that the situation is stabilizing. It hasn't gotten worse, and fortunately, none of the patients who were experiencing these difficulties had to be hospitalized. So none of the cases moved into the severe category. Anyone else?
I also submitted a question about an update on the marital rape consultations. Any headway being made in that regard?
Well, those talks are ongoing. They've been going on for about 2 months now. I think there may be an event this weekend or in the days ahead as discussions continue on that. There's also a plan to develop or write a policy paper regarding issues of gender, which is expected to be published or put out within or before year's end. Yes. So those talks are ongoing. That's it for questions. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you.